Hey, so I wanted to do a video. I don't know if I'm going to get to finish it because it's starting to rain and I think it might even be lightning. So I don't know how long I can do this, but anyway, I wanted to do a video on confidence, on building confidence, building self-confidence, right? Now, there's a lot of videos. Honestly, you can absolutely study this, research this, watch videos, and gain a lot of knowledge about building confidence. But I want to talk about some of the precursors, I guess you could say, to confidence or to building confidence. First of all, there is different types of confidence, right? There is self-confidence, confidence in yourself, right? There is confidence in your work, maybe at your job or, something like that. There is confidence in your relationships. There's confidence in different things, right? A person can be self-confident but not have much confidence in, let's say, raising kids, right? Because if, for example, I don't have any kids, I could be a very self-confident person, but if I have to watch somebody's kids suddenly, and I don't have kids of my own, I might not feel very confident about watching kids, right? Because I don't have any of my own. And when a person doesn't have any kids of their own, and maybe they were not the oldest in the family, or maybe they were an only child or whatever, and they didn't get to see a lot of that person lacks confidence in raising children, or even maybe watching kids or caring for kids, for one main reason: because they lack experience, right? So one of the things that I think is really paramount to building self-confidence and confidence in general. Confidence in your decisions. Confidence in your thought processes. Right? And confidence in general. Really, truly lies in your experience. In gaining experience, right? Gaining life experience. I was talking with a friend earlier this week, and him and I were talking about the wisdom we feel we've gained up to this point, and like about life in general, about certain things, and how even some young children, as a young child, you call them old souls, right? Because they sound so wise, or they're some children are just more mature and they kind of speak in a more mature manner, or you can kind of tell they are more adult-like in their thought processes, right? And so him and I were talking about that, and just in general, and we were just saying how, as you get older, you feel like maybe you're wiser and everything. And I was expressing specifically that I started feeling wiser, if you want to say, through each of my experiences. Okay, I read a quote one day that said, we age not by years, but by experiences. And some people, are hit with major experiences from very young in life to, one right after another. Like, they might be hit with experiences, right? And then, depending on those experiences and how they move through them, and the guidance that they have during that time, will dictate how they look at those experiences. Two people can go through the same bad experience as a child, right? And one person comes out of it one way and looks at the experience as one thing, and another child can come out of the same experience in a totally different way. And a lot of it has to do with how the parents or whoever their parental figures are help guide them, to help them connect the dots, and how safe they are and how safe they are made to feel during those early experiences, how safe they are made to feel to express them openly, to in a calm manner, work through them, and whatever they need, the support that they get, right? So let me give an example. If you at this age, if you're grown, if you're an adult, you likely know somebody, if not you yourself, who was maybe molested as a child. Okay, and it's like you might know somebody else that has had the same experience, and one views it this way and one views it another way. And that is something a lot of us have experienced in life. Different circumstances that was not in our control, or we were not old enough and to be able to stop what was happening or whatever, right? So some of us I have noticed when I share my experience and somebody else shares theirs, and it's like maybe they were extremely similar or whatever, right? But I came out of my experience one way, and the other person came out a totally different way. And I have often thought to myself, why did I gain wisdom and insight from that experience at that age, and the other person did not? And what I've always noticed and seen is that, honestly, I would say 99.9% of it was the fact that I was fortunate to have loving parents. Loving parents who they themselves loved God very much and understood for every action there is a reaction, right? And they understood that you reap what you sow. And they understood sowing good into your children, sowing good into them is going to reap good benefits, right? And it's going to help them. It's going to help them, essentially. So that is huge. And one thing you cannot control how you were born and who you were born to. You cannot control that. And I remember learning this specifically when I was in Mary Kay, and I was very fortunate because when I was in Mary Kay, I was in my 20s, and still young in my adulthood, but I did it for 8 years. But Mary Kay came to me when I was young, younger in life, in my 20s, and it was one of my first real experiences with a decent job, I guess you could say. And I took to heart everything that I learned. Mary Kay taught me about what you think about, you bring about. I mean, that's not to say I didn't know the scriptures that support that, but Mary Kay really honed in on that. Mary Kay used to say, you cannot control who you were born to, who your parents are, and the circumstances that you were born in. Excuse me. that you can't control that, right? So it's like you can only kind of do the best that you can with what you are given, right? So if you are fortunate enough to have two parents, okay, I'm gonna head home and I'm going to, I don't know if this is gonna pass. Excuse me. If you are fortunate enough to have two very good parents, then you are blessed, right? You are very blessed. But a lot of people that I know and that I have met, sometimes older than me, sometimes around my age or whatever, I have noticed that, sometimes their maturity level was a little bit stunted due to the lack of parental guidance, the lack of adequate, healthy, balanced parental guidance. And this is very common. It's very common. And so sometimes the same experiences that people can go through, two people can go through, they come out very different. I had the type of parents that supported me in helping me to think critically, to have critical thinking skills, and to have discernment. And to use discernment through the eyes and the lenses of God and the scriptures. And ultimately, long-term discernment. I remember my dad used to always say to me, first of all, anytime I got in trouble as a child, anytime I got in trouble, not only did I usually get whipped or spanked or whatever, not bad. I mean, believe me, not very bad. And not very often really. But when I got in trouble though, I definitely always got what I used to call, I still say to this day, a 4-hour lecture from my dad, because my dad, I would absolutely have to sit through at least 4 hours, sometimes longer, of a lecture. I mean, to the point where I'd be hungry, I'd have to pause, I'd be like, can I use the bathroom? And I'd have to come back. And he would be talking to me, right? But also a scripture lecture. Like he would break out scriptures. And the thing about my dad was the reason why it was so long is because my dad could discern at what point did I get it. Because I was a brat. Essentially, I was a brat. Because I was raised as an only child until I was almost 5. So, and also I had an impatience about me. And sometimes my dad could tell when I would just be like, yeah, just because I wanted to hurry up. Sometimes, actually a lot of times I would choose the spanking or the punishment just so I didn't have to sit through the 5-hour lecture, right? And my dad would be like, nope, you're going to get that and the lecture, okay? And so, but as much as I couldn't stand it, he knew that was actually the punishment, and actually that was the opportunity that he took to shift my brain or to try to get the learning curve to take place. And he had discernment enough to know that if he just gave me a spanking and let me go, or if he just punished me, especially knowing that I would prefer that over this, he had discernment knowing that wasn't going to actually serve the purpose and actually teach me anything, right? Because many times I was willing to go ahead and be in trouble if it just meant one of those two things. But when I knew I was going to have to sit through the 5-hour lecture or whatever, I'm anti-pants as an adult. Okay, so imagine me as a child. That was torture. It was torture. On the other hand, I remember it. On the other hand, I'm so thankful to my dad, who's not with us anymore, but I'm so thankful to him. He was my stepfather, actually, but he was my dad. He was the only dad that I knew. And while he wasn't my biological father had passed, but he was my dad. And he was the only father outside of my grandfather who, I was very close to my grandfather as well, but my dad was my dad. And he never made me feel that I wasn't his. Absolutely never did. But more than that, he poured into me as much as he did everybody else, and as if I was his own. And my mother, of course, the same. But my dad was definitely the disciplinarian. And my dad taught me so much. One of the things he used to always say is, Melinda, for every action, there is an equal reaction. Every time you drop a pebble or anything into the lake, there's going to be ripples. Some are big, and it might be big or small. It depends on how forceful and what it is, right? But there will always be effects to everything. So choose your actions wisely, because you may or may not want that effect of that action. That's called karma. That's called you reap what you sow. That's what he was teaching me. And sometimes you want that action. Sometimes you want that reaction. Sometimes you want whatever that is that you're doing. And sometimes, though, if you move too fast through your experiences and you don't ever have time to sit and think, reflect, okay, if you weren't encouraged to do that, especially as a child, to start growing your spiritual muscles, your mental clarity, your decision-making ability, then you might have been maybe a little stunted, either emotionally or maybe even psychologically, you know, as an adult, or you may not be exactly where you feel you should be. And you may lack confidence, self-confidence, and confidence in general. Because you were not able, because either you had parents who sheltered you from experiences too much, or they didn't help you through them or guide you at all, and you didn't learn properly through the experiences that you did have. Maybe you just shut down and you just didn't evolve from any of the experiences or grow or learn from them properly. Okay? And so, but as parents, when you let your child make decisions and then deal with the consequences of those decisions, big or small, whatever, they grow confidence in their ability to make decisions as they get older and older and older. And some children absolutely learn through the school of hard knocks. Some children have to do things to learn from them. Okay? Boys tend to be that way. Boys definitely tend to be that way. Like, girls a lot of times don't necessarily have to graduate from the school of hard knocks, right? But boys do tend to be that way. But they grow from it. They grow from it. Sometimes you can talk till the cows come home, and you know still that your son or your child is going to have to go and make that mistake for them to learn from it, right? And that's in everything. And I have had to do that many times. I have learned, like my mother many times have told me this or that or whatever, and, you know, whatever, I still had to, you know, learn from it or whatever and deal with the consequences of it. And especially even more so, you know, in different times, you know, growing up, I had to sit through those 4-hour lectures, 6-hour lectures, whatever. One thing I also remember my dad telling me is when I was having a hard time making a decision about something, or I was very much two-minded about something, or not sure about something, my dad would say to me, Melinda, I want you to walk out each scenario in your mind. Walk it out all the way. Now you hear people say, walk it out. So he would say that, walk it out, but he would say, you know, make whatever decision, play out that scenario in your mind, and if you need to, write it down. The pros and the cons to this decision right here. Like, if I keep this job, the pros are this, the cons are this. The good things are this, the bad things are this. If I keep this job, the good thing is I will be near friends and family. The bad thing is that I am, you know, not making as much as I want. If I take that other job that's farther away, I will have to move away from my friends and family, but I'll be making more money. All right, so that's the pros and cons of each, right? And after doing that, and you walk out, and my mom used to say this too, you walk out the decision, do that in your mind, move over here or stay or whatever, you know, in that job or whatever, and think about it on just that, and and see how you feel. How does it affect you? If you stay at this job You'll only make whatever kind of money, whatever, however much or whatever, maybe not as much or whatever, but you'll get to be around your friends. Okay. And how do you feel? Do you feel happy about that? Are you excited about that? Does that make you feel like life is worth, waking up for every single day? Do you feel excited to go to work and to live your life that way? Or when you think about if you have to make a commute or move or whatever to go to this other job that maybe you'll get more money at, but you'll lose your friends and family. And if you think that all the way through, also, how do you feel? Do you feel nauseous at the thought of that? Do you feel excited at the thought of that? Do you feel happy at the thought of having another job? Or does it scare you to be stepping outside your comfort zone? As you walk through the decision of doing each one, see how your body feels and reacts. This is called checking in, tapping into yourself, feeling the feeling. And what happens when you do that, not only does it help you with your decision-making skills, right? But it also helps you to feel a little bit more prepared and not so scared of and having anxiety of what you feel like you're not sure about or what could come, because you've kind of walked it out. Now, there is some of this that could absolutely, to say thinking too much, it paralyzes you or whatever, and you don't make any decision at all. That's not what I'm talking about. This is just good skills in thinking ability, decision-making skills, right? But when you were taught to do this as a child and young, and you started to exercise this, and you were taught this young, and you did this a lot, you can imagine the confidence that you would build, or that you could be building from a child, as each time you did that and you made decisions and a good outcome